The Exodus is one of the most significant events in the Old Testament, particularly in the book of Exodus, the second book of the Bible. It describes the liberation of the Israelites from slavery in Egypt under the leadership of Moses and their journey to the Promised Land, Canaan. The Exodus is not only a historical narrative, but also a deeply theological story that establishes themes of deliverance, covenant, and faith in God.
The story of the Exodus begins with the Israelites living in Egypt. Initially, they were welcomed in Egypt during the time of Joseph, one of the sons of Jacob on Israel, who rose to a position of power under Pharaoh. However, over time, a new Pharaoh came to power who did not know Joseph. This Pharaoh, fearing the growing number of Israelites, enslaved them and forced them into harsh labor, particularly in the construction of Egyptian cities like Pithom and Ramses.
Moses is the central figure in the Exodus story. He was born during a time when the Pharaoh had ordered the killing of all Hebrew male infants to control the population. To save him, his mother placed him in a basket and set him afloat on the Nile River. He was found and adopted by Pharaoh's daughter and raised in the Egyptian court. As an adult, Moses became aware of his Hebrew heritage. After witnessing an Egyptian taskmaster beating a Hebrew slave, Moses killed the taskmaster and fled Egypt to the land of Midian. There he lived as a shepherd and married Zipporah, the daughter of Jethro.
God's call to Moses, the burning bush. While Moses was in Midian, God appeared to him in the form of a burning bush on Mount Horeb, also called Mount Sinai. God called Moses to return to Egypt and lead the Israelites out of slavery. God revealed his name to Moses as Yahweh, often translated as I am who I am, and promised to deliver the Israelites from Egypt to a land flowing with milk and honey, the Promised Land. Moses, reluctant at first, eventually agreed, with his brother Aaron appointed to help him.
Confrontation with Pharaoh and the 10 plagues. Moses and Aaron returned to Egypt and demanded that Pharaoh let the Israelites go free. Pharaoh refused, leading to a series of 10 plagues that God sent upon Egypt to compel Pharaoh to release the Israelites. Each plague became progressively more severe. The 10 plagues were water turned to blood, the Nile River, frogs overrunning the land, lice or gnats, swarms of flies, death of livestock, boils, hailstorms, locusts, darkness for 3 days, and death of the firstborn sons of Egypt. The final plague, the death of the firstborn, was the most devastating and led directly to the Israelites' release. God instructed the Israelites to mark their doorposts with the blood of a lamb so that the angel of death would pass over their homes, sparing their firstborn. This event is commemorated in the Jewish festival of Passover.
The Exodus from Egypt. After the death of his son and the other firstborn of Egypt, Pharaoh finally agreed to let the Israelites go. The Israelites, numbering around 600,000 men, along with women and children, left Egypt in haste, guided by Moses. They did not take the shortest route to Canaan, but instead were led by God into the wilderness. God provided guidance in the form of a pillar of cloud by day and a pillar of fire by night. crossing the Red Sea. After releasing the Israelites, Pharaoh changed his mind and sent his army to bring them back. The Israelites found themselves trapped between Pharaoh's army and the Red Sea. God, through Moses, parted the waters of the Red Sea, allowing the Israelites to cross on dry ground. When the Egyptian army attempted to follow, the waters returned, drowning Egyptians and ensuring the Israelites' escape.
Journey to Mount Sinai. After crossing the Red Sea, the Israelites continued their journey through the wilderness. Along the way, they faced various challenges, including hunger and thirst. God provided manna, a type of bread from heaven, and quail for food, and miraculously brought forth water from a rock.
The covenant at Mount Sinai. The Israelites eventually arrived at Mount Sinai, where God made a covenant with them, formally establishing them as His chosen people. God gave Moses the 10 Commandments and other laws, which formed the basis of Israel's relationship with God. The 10 Commandments included laws about worshiping only Yahweh, keeping the Sabbath, and ethical conduct toward others, e.g., prohibitions against murder, theft, and adultery.
The Golden Calf Incident. While Moses was on Mount Sinai receiving the law, the Israelites grew impatient and created a golden calf to worship, which violated the first commandment. Moses returned, destroyed the idol, and called the people to repentance. This incident reflected the ongoing struggle of the Israelites to remain faithful to God during their journey.
The wilderness wanderings. Despite God's guidance, the Israelites continued to grumble and rebel against Moses and God. As a result of their lack of faith, particularly their refusal to trust God to lead them into the Promised Land, they were condemned to wander in the wilderness for 40 years. During this time, the older generation that had left Egypt died, and a new generation arose.
The Promised Land. At the end of the 40 years, Moses led the Israelites to the borders of the Promised Land. However, because of his own disobedience earlier in the journey, Moses was not allowed to enter the land himself. Instead, leadership passed to Joshua, who would lead the Israelites into Canaan after Moses' death. Before his death, Moses gave a final speech to the Israelites, urging them to remain faithful to God, which is recorded in the book of Deuteronomy. The Exodus is not just a historical event, but also a spiritual and theological narrative about liberation, faith, and the ongoing relationship between God and His people. Thank you for watching the video, The Exodus, provided by History and Current Events. This is Gina, and Sarah, Lily, Bill, Brian, and Tony have also contributed so far as narrators. Thank you.